The truck stop stretches out under falling snow, a field of dark shapes marked by running lights, amber, red, the occasional glow of a cab window. 18-wheelers rest side by side in long rows, their engines humming through the cold. It's just past 5 in the afternoon, but the winter sky has already darkened to charcoal, and the temperature is dropping toward 0. Somewhere in this landscape of idling semis, a driver is finishing the workday. The logbook shows 11 hours on the road. The fuel gauge reads 3/4 full. The GPS marks this rest area as the planned stop. Now comes the shift, from operator to resident, from highway to home. Tonight, we're stepping inside one of these cabs. We're watching the transformation that happens when a long-haul driver pulls off the interstate, finds a parking space, and settles in for the night. Not in a motel room, not in a house. Here, in the sleeper compartment of a working truck, while winter presses against the metal walls and wind moves across the open lot. This is what it's like to sleep in a truck cab during freezing winter nights. The search begins an hour before stopping, sometimes longer. Federal regulations mandate rest after 11 hours of driving. The driver has been counting those hours since morning, tracking them against the distance remaining and the locations ahead. By mid-afternoon, with winter daylight already fading, the mental list forms. Which truck stops lie within range? Which rest areas permit overnight parking? Which locations have fuel, food, bathrooms? Which ones fill early? In summer, the calculation is routine. In winter, it becomes tactical. Cold weather sends drivers searching for specific qualities: shelter from wind, proximity to facilities that won't require a quarter-mile walk across ice, space enough to maneuver a 53-foot trailer without jackknifing on snow. Fuel availability matters more in winter. Idling through a sub-zero night consumes diesel steadily, and running dry means losing heat when it's needed most. The truck stop appears ahead, marked by its tower of lights and the distinctive shapes of parked semis. The driver signals downshifts and guides the rig off the interstate. The entrance road has been ploughed, but snowbanks rise on both sides, narrowing the path. The parking lot beyond holds perhaps 80 trucks already. More are arriving. Finding a spot requires surveying the landscape. The driver rolls slowly through the lanes, scanning. Spaces near the building are taken. Those disappeared hours ago. The front rows hold mostly day cabs, smaller trucks, whose drivers will leave before dawn. The back sections show the long-haul rigs, the ones with extended sleeper compartments, the ones whose drivers are here for the night. The driver looks for a pull-through space along the perimeter, backing out of a spot at 5 in the morning in darkness, with ice underfoot, is something to avoid when possible. The perimeter also offers distance from the loudest machines, the refrigerated trailers that cycle their cooling units constantly, roaring to life every 20 minutes through the night. A space opens along the eastern edge, not perfect, slightly uphill, but clear of the reefers, positioned so morning departure won't require elaborate maneuvering. The driver swings wide, aligns the trailer, and eases into the spot. The air brakes release with their characteristic hiss. The parking brake sets. The transmission shifts to neutral. The engine continues running. It will run all night. Outside, the temperature reads 15 degrees Fahrenheit. The forecast calls for single digits by midnight, with wind chills below 0. Snow falls steadily, small flakes that swirl in the truck's running lights. Other drivers move between their cabs and the building, heads down, hands shoved in pockets. The driver sits for a moment, hands still on the wheel, looking through the windshield at the white, dusted lot. This is the transition point, the dividing line between motion and stillness. For 11 hours the world has been passing. Now it stops. The first task is confirming the fuel situation. The gauge shows 3/4 of a tank, roughly 150 gallons. The truck burns roughly 1 gallon per hour while idling. That's enough for a week of nights if needed, but the driver still makes note of it, mentally checking it against the overnight hours ahead. Fuel additives went into the tank at the last fill-up, chemicals designed to prevent gelling when diesel fuel is exposed to extreme cold. Below 20 degrees, untreated fuel can begin to cloud, thickening until it won't flow through fuel lines. Below 10 degrees, it can gel solid. The driver checks the auxiliary power unit next, the small diesel engine mounted beneath the cab, designed specifically for providing heat and electricity without idling the main engine. It's running smoothly, its hum quieter than the big engine, but steady. The APU is winterized, equipped for operation down to 20 below zero. Through the passenger window, the building is visible 200 feet away. Light pours from its windows. The driver will walk there later. Bathroom, possibly food, the last excursion before sealing in for the night. But not yet. First comes the organization of space, the claiming of territory, the transformation of the cab from workspace to living quarters. The driver releases the seatbelt, shifts in the seat, and reaches for the curtain that separates the front cab from the sleeper compartment behind. The night is beginning. The sleeper curtain pulls closed with a sound like heavy canvas sliding on a rod. It's insulated fabric thick enough to trap heat and block light, and it seals the driving compartment away from the living space. What was one continuous interior is now two separate zones. The driver turns in the seat and looks back into the sleeper. It's a 72-inch compartment, 6 feet from the back of the front seats to the rear wall of the cab. Not the largest available, but far from the smallest. The space is rectangular, roughly 8 feet wide and 6 feet deep, with a ceiling height of perhaps 6.5 feet at the centre, sloping downward at the sides where the cab's exterior curves. The bunk occupies most of the space. It's a mattress platform that spans the width of the cab, elevated roughly 2 feet off the floor to allow storage underneath. The mattress itself is a standard twin size, though some drivers replace it with upgraded memory foam or truck-specific bedding designed for the dimensions. Above the bunk, storage compartments line both sides, cabinets with doors that latch securely to prevent them flying open during sudden stops. Below the bunk, plastic storage bins hold clothes, extra blankets, tools, paperwork. The organization is precise because it has to be. Every item stored carefully, every space used. There is no room for disorder in 6 feet by 8 feet. The driver climbs back between the seats, a practiced motion that involves ducking slightly and stepping over the center console. The sleeper cab floor is carpeted, industrial carpet thin but enough to provide some insulation from the metal below. The temperature here is already warmer than the front cab. Heat rises, and the enclosed space holds it. A small reading light mounts to the wall above the bunk, its LED bulb casting cool, white light across the bedding. Another light, amber-toned, sits near the floor, offering softer illumination. The driver turns on the lower light and leaves the brighter one off. The goal for the next hour is gradual transition, from alertness to rest, from motion to stillness. The heating system hums through a vent near the floor. The auxiliary power unit is doing its work, pushing warm air into the compartment. The driver adjusts the thermostat, a small dial mounted near the bunk, turning it to 68 degrees. The space will warm slowly over the next 30 to 40 minutes. Rushing the process creates stuffiness, an overheated feeling that makes sleep difficult later. Outside, wind rocks the cab slightly. It's not strong wind, just the ordinary movement of air across an open parking lot, but the truck responds to it. The suspension shifts. The whole vehicle settles and rises minutely, a gentle motion that drivers grow accustomed to. Some find it soothing after a while. The rocking of a cradle. Others never adjust to it, always aware that they're sleeping in something that moves. The windows of the sleeper compartment are small, rectangular panes on each side, perhaps 18 inches wide and 12 inches tall. Through them the parking lot is visible, the shapes of other trucks, the glow of the building, the steady fall of snow. Later, those windows will be covered. For now, the driver leaves them clear. The driver sits on the edge of the bunk, still wearing the day's clothes: jeans, thermal shirt, heavy socks. Boots come off first. They're winter-rated, insulated and waterproof, and they've been on since 6 this morning. Unlacing them, pulling them free, setting them beside the door where they'll be needed again tomorrow. The relief is immediate. Coat next. It's a heavy parka rated for sub-zero temperatures, and it hangs on a hook mounted to the sleeper wall. Gloves tuck into the pockets. A knit cap joins them. These items stay within reach. If something goes wrong overnight, if the heating fails, if the APU quits, if temperatures plummet beyond what the systems can manage, those layers need to be accessible within seconds. The driver retrieves a notebook from a storage compartment. The logbook is already filed electronically, but personal notes go in the notebook: fuel costs, parking locations, weather conditions, maintenance reminders. Tonight's entry is brief: date, location, arrival time, temperature, snow. The handwriting is steady, practiced. This ritual happens every night, regardless of season or location. While writing, the driver listens to the APU, to the main engine, still idling in the front cab, to the cycling of the heating fan. These sounds form a baseline, the normal audio signature of a functioning truck. Learning those sounds is part of long-haul work. Deviation from them, a rattle, a skip, a change in pitch, signals trouble. Tonight, everything sounds correct. The warmth is building. The driver can feel it in the air, that particular quality when a cold space begins to heat. The metal walls are still cold to the touch, but the air itself is losing its bite. The sleeper compartment is becoming what it needs to be. Outside, another truck pulls into a nearby space, its backup alarm beeping rhythmically. Air brakes hiss, the engine settles into idle. Someone else is arriving, someone else is beginning their own version of this same process. The driver stands, stretches and reaches for the window covers. Before anything else, before removing boots or unzipping the heavy coat, the driver checks fuel. It's the first priority, always. The gauge reads 3/4. Enough for the night. Enough for idling through the next 10 hours, with margin beyond that. The calculation is automatic now, embedded in muscle memory after years of winter nights. A half tank might be sufficient in September, but not now. Not when the outside temperature reads 12 degrees and falling. The driver climbs back down from the cab, boots crunching on snow that's already accumulating over the parking lot's packed ice. The fuel tanks run along both sides of the chassis, massive aluminum cylinders holding a combined 300 gallons when full. The driver unscrews the first cap, peers inside with a flashlight. The diesel sits well above the halfway point, its surface dark and still. No signs of waxing, no cloudy appearance that would indicate the beginning of gel formation. This is the specific danger of winter fuel. Diesel contains paraffin waxes that remain liquid at normal temperatures but begin to solidify when cold deepens. The cloud point, the temperature at which wax crystals first appear, varies by fuel blend, but typically falls somewhere between 15 and 5 degrees Fahrenheit for standard diesel. Below that, the fuel grows cloudy. Below that further, it reaches the pour point, the temperature at which it stops flowing altogether. A gelled fuel tank means no engine. No engine means no heat. No heat in sub-zero conditions means emergency. The driver added anti-gel additive at the last fuel stop, 140 miles back. The bottle's instructions promised protection down to negative 15 degrees. The product works by modifying the wax crystal structure, preventing the crystals from bonding together and clogging fuel filters. It's cheap insurance. A $12 bottle versus a $300 service call to thaw frozen fuel lines, or worse. The danger of being stranded overnight without heat. Most truck stops sell winter blend diesel from November through March. Fuel that's been treated at the refinery to lower its cloud point. But winter blend is relative. Fuel sold in Tennessee carries different additives than fuel sold in Montana. A driver fueling in Little Rock and driving north into a Minnesota cold snap might find that southern winter fuel isn't winter enough. The driver checks forecasts obsessively during this season, tracks the route against predicted temperatures, adds extra additive when the numbers drop into the danger zone. The fuel tank heaters provide another layer of protection. These are simple heating elements powered by the truck's electrical system that wrap around the fuel tanks or mount inside them. The driver installed auxiliary heaters 2 winters ago, aftermarket units that cost $180 each but have proven their value. They activate automatically when fuel temperature drops below 15 degrees, applying just enough warmth to keep the diesel flowing without wasting significant battery power. The driver moves to the second tank, repeats the inspection, satisfied, screws both caps back on tight. The wind has picked up in just the few minutes since parking. It comes from the northwest, steady and bitter, carrying occasional swirls of fresh snow. The driver glances at the truck's orientation. The cab door faces southeast, away from the prevailing wind. Good. One small advantage. Opening that door repeatedly throughout the evening will let cold air rush in, but at least it won't carry the full force of the weather. Back inside the cab, the driver checks the fuel gauge once more, then switches attention to the fuel filter heater. This is a separate system, an electric heating element built into the fuel filter housing. It prevents the filter itself from clogging with wax crystals, which is often the first failure point, even when tank fuel remains liquid. The indicator light on the dash shows the heater is functioning. The driver makes a mental note. The fuel filter was changed 8,000 miles ago, still well within its service interval. A clogged filter in summer is an inconvenience. In winter, it's a crisis. The auxiliary power unit sits in its compartment beneath the sleeper, accessible through a side panel. The driver knows its fuel tank is full, topped off at the same stop as the main tanks. The APU burns diesel at a fraction of the rate of the main engine, perhaps a tenth of a gallon per hour, but it still needs fuel. Its smaller tank holds 15 gallons, enough for several days of continuous operation if necessary. The APU has its own fuel filter, its own heating element, its own set of cold weather vulnerabilities. The driver has checked and maintained all of them according to schedule. Some drivers run the main engine all night, every night of winter. It's simpler, foolproof. The big diesel rumbles on, circulating coolant through the heating system, maintaining cab temperature with brute force reliability. But fuel consumption runs high, 3/4 of a gallon per hour, 8 or 9 gallons through a night of sleep. And idling laws vary by state. Some jurisdictions prohibit idling beyond 5 minutes. Others make exceptions for sleeper cabs in extreme temperatures, but define extreme differently. Connecticut says below 20 degrees. Texas says below 32 in certain counties. California restricts idling regardless of temperature, but permits use of APUs. The driver prefers the APU for multiple reasons. Fuel economy, certainly. Quieter operation, which matters less here in the active environment of a truck stop, but matters greatly when parked in a quiet rest area. And reduced wear on the main engine. Every hour of idle time is an hour of operation, accumulating toward the next oil change, the next maintenance interval, the eventual overhaul. The APU is designed for extended idling. The main engine tolerates it, but isn't optimized for it. The dashboard panel shows the APU status: running, output steady. The small diesel engine beneath the floor generates electricity and heat independently of the main engine, which now sits quiet and cooling. The driver can feel the subtle vibration through the seat, different from the main engine's heavier pulse. It's a sound and sensation that will continue through the night, barely noticeable after the first few minutes, a mechanical heartbeat maintaining the boundary between inside warmth and outside cold. The driver scans the gauges one final time. Fuel sufficient, systems functioning. The math is simple but essential. Enough diesel to generate enough heat to survive the night safely. It's a calculation that drivers in California or Florida rarely consider, but that defines every winter evening for those running northern routes. The fuel check is complete. Now the actual settling in can begin. The sleeper cab is 7 feet long, 8 feet wide at its widest point, and just tall enough to stand in if you're under 6 feet and don't mind ducking slightly beneath the ceiling curve. This is the 72-inch configuration common in long-haul trucks, neither the smallest nor the largest available. The space behind the driver's seat becomes bedroom, closet, office, kitchen, and living room all at once. The bunk occupies the far end, a mattress measuring 42 inches wide and 80 inches long. Its foam 6 inches thick, firmer than most household mattresses. The driver replaced the factory mattress 3 years ago with an upgraded version that included a memory foam top layer. That addition cost $340 but improved sleep quality enough to justify the expense. The mattress sits on a platform with storage underneath, a space accessible by lifting the sleeping surface on hinges. Inside that storage, spare blankets, a sleeping bag rated to -20 degrees, a winter coat that's too bulky to hang, and a duffel bag containing off-season clothing. Above the bunk, a row of cabinets runs the width of the sleeper. These upper compartments hold non-perishable food, spare toiletries, a first aid kit, books, and a small box of tools. The cabinets have latches that must be consciously closed, simple mechanical catches that prevent doors from swinging open during transit. A truck hitting a pothole at highway speed generates enough force to send unsecured objects flying. Everything must be contained. On the right wall, a small closet rod holds hanging clothes. The space accommodates perhaps 10 hangers. Next to the closet, a narrow cabinet holds folded clothes, organized by type. Work shirts on one shelf, thermal base layers on another, jeans and pants on the bottom. Next to that, built into the wall, a 12-volt refrigerator the size of a large microwave. It hums constantly, drawing power from the truck's electrical system, keeping drinks cold and perishable foods safe for 3 or 4 days between grocery stops. The left wall features more storage, open shelves at eye level holding a laptop, charging cables, paperwork, a small printer, a lunchbox, and a collection of water bottles. Below the shelves, a small fold-down table, currently in its up position against the wall. When lowered, it provides a surface for meals or computer work, though the space is tight, perhaps 18 inches of depth. The table's surface shows wear, scratches from keys and tools, coffee rings that didn't wipe away completely, a phone number written in permanent marker and never fully removed. Beneath the table space, more cabinets. These hold the practical equipment, flashlights, batteries, zip ties, bungee cords, cleaning supplies, paper towels, and plastic bags. One cabinet contains winter-specific gear, an ice scraper, a small shovel, a bag of sand for traction, chemical hand warmers, extra gloves, and a heavy-duty extension cord for plugging into shore power when available. The floor is industrial vinyl, textured for traction, easy to sweep and wipe clean. A small mat runs alongside the bunk, providing slight cushioning and a warmer surface than bare vinyl for bare feet. The walls are molded plastic with fabric covering in some areas, designed for durability rather than aesthetics. The color scheme is grey and black, neutral and utilitarian. At the front of the sleeper, where it connects to the main cab, a heavy curtain hangs on a track. This curtain seals the sleeper from the front cab area when drawn, creating a separate climate zone and blocking light from the windshield. The curtain is insulated, not just fabric, but a layered material with a thin foam core. It's one of the most important components for winter sleeping. Without it, heat would flow freely into the larger cab area, and the small sleeper heater would struggle to maintain comfortable temperature. The lighting is LED, strips mounted along the ceiling edges and small dome lights above the bunk. The driver can control them independently. Full brightness for getting ready in the morning, dim red light for moving around without destroying night vision or complete darkness. The switches are within easy reach from the bunk, so the driver can turn lights off without getting up after settling in for the night. Ventilation comes from small roof vents, plastic hatches that can be opened manually in mild weather to allow air circulation. In winter, these stay closed and latched. Even so, the sleeper needs air exchange. The driver breathes. Moisture from breath condenses. Without any air movement, condensation would collect on the cold surfaces, the walls, the windows, anywhere the interior warmth meets an exterior chilled barrier. Small vents built into the sleeper allow minimal air exchange, enough to prevent suffocation and reduce moisture buildup, but not so much that heat escapes wastefully. A carbon monoxide detector mounts on the ceiling near the bunk. It's battery-powered, tested monthly, with fresh batteries installed at the start of winter. Carbon monoxide is rare in properly functioning trucks, but not impossible. Exhaust leaks, APU malfunctions, or the dangerous practice of running a generator inside the cab can produce the colourless, odourless gas. The detector is cheap insurance. Personal touches appear in small ways. 2 photographs are mounted on the wall beside the bunk. Family members' faces the driver sees at the end of each day and first thing each morning. A small wooden cross hangs from a cabinet handle. A favourite coffee mug sits secured in a holder welded to the wall. These items don't improve functionality, but they matter. They shift the space incrementally from industrial cab to temporary home. The overall impression is one of density and efficiency. There is no wasted space. Every surface serves a purpose. Every item has a designated location. This is not minimalism by choice, but by necessity. A long-haul driver might spend 250 nights per year in this space, living out of it for weeks at a stretch between home visits. It must function as a complete dwelling despite its dimensions. The driver has refined this space over 5 years and 600,000 miles. Early on, there were too many belongings, too much clutter, inefficient organization. Gradually, the unnecessary items were eliminated. The daily use objects found their optimal locations. The storage areas were assigned specific categories and maintained according to that logic. What remains is a system, not comfortable in the way a house is comfortable, but workable, reliable, and in its own way, sufficient. Now, as darkness settles fully outside and temperature continues dropping, this small capsule becomes the entire world. The driver will eat here, sleep here, spend the next 12 hours here before the outside world becomes relevant again. The fuel is sufficient. The systems are functioning. The space is ready. The driver reaches forward and adjusts a dial on the dashboard. A moment later, a soft mechanical hum begins beneath the bunk. This is the sound of survival equipment coming online, keeping warm in a metal box. When the temperature outside drops to 0 or below, requires more than hope. It requires systems, multiple systems, and the driver knows each one. The simplest heat source is the one already running. The truck's main engine. When the diesel motor idles, it circulates hot coolant through a heating core mounted somewhere behind the dashboard. The same basic principle as a home furnace, but fed by an engine that burns a gallon of fuel roughly every 75 minutes. The heat is real. The heat is immediate, but the cost accumulates through the night. Then there are the laws. Many states and truck stops prohibit idling beyond 5 or 10 minutes. The regulations exist for noise control and emissions. They exist whether the air temperature is 40 degrees or 14 below. So the main engine, despite its simplicity, often cannot run all night. This is where the auxiliary power unit enters, the APU. A small diesel engine, much smaller than the truck's main motor, mounted in a box beneath or behind the sleeper cab. When engaged, it generates electricity and produces heat. It burns far less fuel than the main engine, perhaps a quarter gallon per hour. It runs quieter. It satisfies anti-idling restrictions in most jurisdictions. The driver taps a control panel mounted near the bunk. A screen shows battery voltage, fuel consumption, interior temperature. The APU responds to the call, its tone distinct from the larger engine's rumble. This is the mechanical heartbeat that will sustain warmth through the coming hours. Not every truck carries an APU. The units cost several $1,000s to install. Older rigs or trucks owned by smaller companies with thin margins often go without. For those drivers, the calculation changes. Some rely on diesel-fired heaters. These units, Webasto and Espar, are the common brands, burn fuel independently of the main engine. They are compact. They are efficient. A pint of diesel can produce heat for an hour or more. The heater draws air from outside, warms it in a combustion chamber no larger than a coffee can, and blows the heated air into the sleeper. The exhaust vents safely away from the cab. The sound is a low whoosh, steady and rhythmic. The warmth arrives in waves from a vent positioned near the bunk. The driver adjusts the thermostat, setting it to maintain 65 degrees. The unit will cycle on and off through the night, responding to the temperature it senses, but equipment fails. Diesel gels in extreme cold despite additives, batteries drain, heaters malfunction so the driver keeps backup options within reach, battery-powered bunk heaters. These are electric blankets, or heating pads that draw directly from the truck's 12-volt battery system. They provide localized warmth, enough to keep a sleeping person comfortable, even if ambient air temperature drops. They consume power steadily, so the driver monitors battery voltage. If the batteries drain too low, the truck will not start in the morning. It is a balance. Warmth now against mobility later. Some drivers carry small catalytic heaters designed for camping. These run on propane. They produce heat without flame, reducing carbon monoxide risk. But they also produce moisture, condensation that can freeze on windows and create problems of its own. And they require ventilation, which means opening a window slightly, which means losing heat. The calculation is rarely simple. The driver tonight uses a combination. The APU provides the foundation. A 12-volt heated mattress pad adds a second layer, set to its lowest power draw. Together, they create a zone of warmth sufficient for sleep. The driver explains this as the systems continue their work. The APU hums. The mattress pad radiates gentle heat. The main engine, still idling for now, will be shut down once the sleeper reaches a stable temperature. This is the architecture of warmth. Not one solution, but several, layered and redundant. The driver has learned through winters on the road that comfort in freezing conditions comes not from a single perfect system, but from understanding how to combine the tools available. The temperature gauge inside the sleeper reads 58 degrees, rising. The driver leaves the systems running and turns attention to the next task, sealing the space to trap what warmth is being created. Heat generated is only useful if heat is retained. The driver knows this, and so begins the process of closing off the world. The sleeper cab is not airtight. It was never designed to be. Small gaps exist around the edges of the bunk access door, around windows where panels meet frame. In moderate weather, this ventilation prevents stuffiness. In winter, every gap is a leak. The driver starts with a pass-through curtain. This heavy fabric barrier hangs between the front cab and the sleeper area. During the day, it stays pulled aside, allowing easy movement between driver's seat and bunk. Now it gets drawn fully closed. The curtain is insulated, not heavily, but enough to matter. It attaches to the ceiling with snaps or Velcro and drapes down to meet the floor or the top edge of the driver's seat. When sealed, it creates two separate zones. The front cab, with its large windshield and side windows, will grow cold quickly once the main engine shuts off. The sleeper, smaller and more contained, will hold warmth longer. The driver fastens each snap with care, ensuring no gaps remain at the top edge. Cold air sinks, but it also moves through any opening it finds. A 6-inch gap at the top of a curtain can drain heat from the entire sleeper over the course of a night. Next, the windows. The sleeper has two small windows, one on each side. In summer, drivers open them for cross-ventilation. In winter, they become vulnerabilities. Glass conducts cold. A pane of window glass in contact with air at 10 degrees below zero will radiate cold inward, chilling the air directly around it, creating convection currents that pull warmth away from the bunk. The driver unfolds insulated window covers. These are reflective panels, sometimes commercial products designed specifically for trucks, sometimes improvised from emergency blankets and cardboard. They fit snugly into the window frames, held in place with suction cups or small clips. The silver reflective surface faces inward. This is deliberate. Radiant heat from the driver's body, from the heating systems, bounces back instead of escaping through the glass. The layer of trapped air between the cover and the window adds insulation. The temperature difference is measurable. With covers in place, the interior surface of the window area might stay 15 or 20 degrees warmer than without. Some drivers add a second measure. They tape the edges of the window covers, creating an airtight seal. Others stuff small towels into the gaps around the cover perimeter. The goal is the same: eliminate paths for heat to escape. The driver tonight uses covers but does not tape them. Experience has taught that some minimal air exchange is necessary. A completely sealed sleeper, occupied by a breathing human and possibly running a propane or fuel-burning heater, can develop air quality problems. Carbon dioxide accumulates, condensation increases. A small amount of ventilation, even in extreme cold, is a trade worth making. But ventilation must be controlled. The driver checks the sleeper's roof vent. It is closed. The small adjustable vents near the floor, designed to bring in fresh air when the truck is moving, are also closed. The only intentional opening is a tiny gap, perhaps a 1/4 inch, where the pass-through curtain meets the side wall. Enough for air to circulate slowly, not enough to create a draft. The driver moves through the space, checking, runs a hand along the seams where the sleeper walls meet the cab frame, feels for moving air, finds a small gap near the rear corner where cold is seeping in, stuffs a rolled shirt into the space. The cold flow stops. This is not paranoia, this is practiced efficiency. Every bit of warmth costs fuel or battery power. Every degree maintained is one less degree the heating system must generate. Over a 10-hour night, the small gaps add up to significant losses. The interior temperature has now reached 62 degrees. The APU continues its steady operation. The driver's breath no longer fogs visibly in the cabin air. The space, once merely sheltered, is becoming warm. Outside, the wind picks up. It presses against the truck's broad side. The whole cab shifts slightly, a sensation the driver no longer consciously notices, but the wind matters. It drives the effective temperature lower. Wind chill that does not affect thermometers but does affect how quickly heat escapes through metal skin. The driver has done what can be done. The curtain is drawn, the windows are covered, the gaps are sealed, the heating systems are running. The sleeper has become a controlled environment, a pocket of warmth carved out of the frozen night. Now comes the waiting. The driver settles onto the bunk, still fully dressed in thermal layers and a fleece jacket, and lets the systems do their work. The temperature will continue to rise slowly. In 30 minutes, perhaps 40, it will reach the point where heavy outer layers become unnecessary, where the driver can move in comfort rather than simply enduring. For now, there is only the hum of the APU, the faint ticking of warming metal, and the knowledge that the night's cold is being held, for the moment, at bay. The heating systems are on now. The engine runs its steady rhythm. The auxiliary power unit hums beneath the sleeper compartment, but the temperature inside hasn't climbed yet. The metal walls still hold the cold from outside. The driver remains fully dressed, heavy jacket still zipped, insulated boots still laced, winter hat still pulled low. This is the waiting period, the 30 to 45 minutes when the systems work to transform the space from cold metal box to something approaching comfortable. The driver doesn't rush this process, doesn't strip down and shiver while heat slowly builds. Instead, this time gets used. Paperwork spreads across the small fold-down table. The logbook requires entries. Hours of service need recording. The electronic logging device needs review. Federal regulations don't pause for winter nights or fatigue. The numbers must be accurate. The times must be logged. The next day's driving window depends on when this day officially ends. The driver's gloved hands hold a pen, writes clearly despite the bulk of winter gloves, flips between pages, checks the previous entries, calculates the hours remaining before the mandatory rest period completes. In summer, these gloves would be ridiculous inside a truck cab. In winter, with the temperature still climbing from near freezing to something tolerable, they're necessary. Phone comes out. The route for tomorrow needs planning. Weather forecasts need checking. Road condition reports scroll past. Interstate closures, chain requirements, winter storm warnings. The information matters more in these months than any other time of year. A route that looks simple on a map becomes complicated when snow depth and ice factor in. Some drivers use this time to prepare food. A 12-volt electric kettle heats water, instant coffee or tea. The steam that rises serves double purpose. The hot drink warms from inside. The water vapor adds moisture to air that winter heating renders bone dry. Others heat soup in a 12-volt lunchbox oven. The device draws power from the truck's electrical system. Takes longer than a home microwave, but time is available now. The small microwave mounted in more elaborate sleeper cabs runs off the inverter, draws significant power, creates additional heat as byproduct of operation. The driver might heat a frozen meal, might warm bread, might simply boil water. The food matters less than the ritual. The establishment of routine, the signal to the body that the day's driving has ended and evening has begun. The temperature gauge inside the sleeper shows the climb, 40 degrees, 45, 50. The metal walls lose their icy touch. The air stops carrying that sharp edge. The driver's breath no longer makes visible clouds. This gradual warming feels better than sudden heat would. Allows the body to adjust, prevents the shock of temperature extremes. Condensation begins to form on windows. This is expected, inevitable. Warm air from the heaters meets cold glass. Water vapor turns liquid. The driver has already placed insulated window covers over most surfaces, but the small gaps, the uncovered sections, they show moisture. Some drivers wipe it away immediately. Others let it be. Know it will freeze overnight on the outer surface anyway. The pass-through curtain between the cab and sleeper stays closed. This matters enormously for heat retention. The front cab, with its large windshield, its door seals that allow thin drafts, its greater surface area of glass and metal, loses heat rapidly. The sleeper compartment, smaller and more enclosed, holds warmth better. The heavy curtain creates a thermal barrier, keeps the heating system's work concentrated in the space that matters. Some drivers have added extra insulation over the years, reflective bubble wrap adhered to walls during winter months, foam board cut to fit specific panels, heavy blankets hung as additional curtain layers. These modifications aren't standard. The manufacturer provides basic insulation, but drivers who spend many winters on the road learn that additional barriers pay dividends in comfort and fuel efficiency. The jacket comes off first, unzipped slowly, hung on the hook designed for this purpose, then the heavy outer pants. The boots unlaced and set near the door where they'll be needed again. The winter hat, the gloves, each layer removed as the interior temperature continues its climb. 55 degrees, 60, 65. The driver now wears only the base layers, thermal underwear, heavy socks, the clothing that'll stay on through the evening and night. Enough warmth for mobility while the heating systems maintain the space. Not so much that overheating becomes a problem. The paperwork gets finished, tucked away. The phone goes to charging, plugged into one of several USB ports or 12-volt outlets scattered throughout the sleeper. Battery life matters when the phone serves as alarm, communication device, entertainment, and emergency lifeline. Outside, full darkness has settled. The truck stoplights reflect off snow. Other trucks idle in their spaces. Exhaust plumes rise and dissipate. The temperature out there continues to drop. Single digits now, heading toward 0. The contrast between outside and inside grows sharper. The driver stands, stretches carefully in the limited height clearance, feels the warmth from the heating vent, tests the temperature distribution, warmest near the vent, cooler at the far end of the sleeper, coolest near the door and at floor level. This gradient is normal, expected. The driver has learned where to place things based on this map of warmth. Items that shouldn't freeze, water bottles, certain foods, medications stay near the heating vent. Items that don't matter, spare clothing, tools, paperwork, can occupy cooler zones. The phone charges in a warm spot. The laptop, if there is one, stays away from direct heat. The space feels almost comfortable now, approaching 70 degrees near the center. The driver's hands, no longer gloved, move freely. The breath comes easy. The metal walls have absorbed enough heat to stop actively radiating cold. The transformation is complete. But one task remains before the evening can truly begin. One necessity that requires putting the winter layers back on and stepping outside into the night. The final trip across the parking lot, the last exposure to the cold before sealing in for the night. The driver looks at the heavy jacket, the boots, knows the walk is necessary, inevitable. Better done now than in the middle of the night. Better done while the body is still warm from the heated space, before drowsiness sets in, before the comfort of the sleeper makes leaving seem impossible. The pre-warming period ends. The space is ready. The body is ready. But the winter night requires one more confrontation before shelter can be claimed completely. The jacket goes back on. The driver's hands find the familiar motion, zipper pulled up, collar adjusted. The warmth built up inside the sleeper cab prepares to meet the single-digit cold outside. This walk is necessary. There's no avoiding it. Boots get laced again, the good winter ones, insulated, treaded soles designed for ice. Not the light shoes some drivers wear in summer for these same trips across truck stop parking lots. Winter demands better, demands traction. The driver learned this years ago, learned it through slips and near falls, and watching other drivers go down hard on black ice. Heavy gloves, winter hat pulled low, flashlight checked, battery good, beam strong. The walk ahead might be 50 yards, might be twice that depending on where the truck sits in relation to the building. The parking lot will be uneven. Snow packed down by dozens of heavy vehicles, ice underneath in patches. The flashlight isn't optional. The door opens. The cold comes in immediately. Sharp, physical. The warmth from the sleeper escapes around the driver's body, visible as a cloud of condensation. The temperature difference measures 60, 70 degrees. The body registers this as shock despite all the layers. The driver steps down, one hand on the door frame, one hand on the grab handle, feet finding the step, then the ground. The snow crunches, compressed by cold into something granular, almost crystalline. The sound carries in the still air. The door closes, shuts firmly, locks. The driver walks. The parking lot spreads out in all directions. Rows of trucks sit silent, most idle. Their exhausts create plumes that rise straight up in the windless cold. Some trucks show no lights except the required clearance markers. Drivers already settled in, already isolated in their own sleeper cabs. A few show interior lights, silhouettes move in behind curtains, others beginning this same evening ritual. The flashlight beam sweeps ahead, catches the reflective strips on other trailers, shows the irregularities in the snow surface, the frozen ruts, the patches where brown ice shows through. The driver's boots find purchase. Step carefully, weight committed only after the foot proves stable. Cold air enters the lungs, feels sharp, dry. The moisture from each breath freezes into tiny ice crystals immediately. They hang in the flashlight beam for a moment, then vanish. The driver's face, the only exposed skin, begins to ache. That particular deep cold that penetrates despite the absence of wind. Other figures move in the lot, other drivers making the same journey. Flashlight beams bob and cross. No one speaks. Too cold for conversation, too late in the day for socializing, each person focused on their own path, their own necessary trip. The shared experience requires no acknowledgement. The truck stop building glows ahead, bright fluorescent light, spilling from windows, the promise of warmth. The driver's pace stays measured, doesn't rush. Rushing on ice invites falling. The cold makes rushing feel urgent. But the cold also makes the ice more treacherous. These facts exist in tension. A diesel smell hangs in the air, exhaust from idling trucks, fuel vapors from vehicles being filled. The cold intensifies it somehow, makes it sharper, more present. Mixed with it comes the smell of snow, that particular clean emptiness, water frozen in the atmosphere. The driver reaches the cleared walkway near the building. The concrete here shows through, salt scattered across the surface, grit for traction. The walking becomes easier. The boots find solid purchase. The flashlight lowers slightly. The door to the facility, metal handle cold even through gloves. The driver pulls, steps into the vestibule. The temperature change happens in layers. First vestibule warmer than outside, but not heated. Then the second door into the fully heated interior. The air inside feels almost suffocating after the cold. 72, 75 degrees. The driver's glasses fog immediately. Vision blurs. This always happens. The driver knows to wait. Stand still. Let the lenses clear. Removing them to wipe only makes it worse. The truck stop continues its business. 24 hours every day. Winter doesn't change this. A few other drivers stand near the coffee station. Others browse the aisles. The clerk behind the counter watches the room with the practiced awareness of someone working night shift. Security cameras show the parking lot, the fuel pumps, the endless documentation. The driver moves through the space, past the retail section, past the driver's lounge with its worn chairs and television, to the restroom facilities in the back. Clean enough, maintained regularly, heated. These simple facts matter enormously on winter nights. The necessary tasks complete quickly. Hands washed with hot water, a luxury, a reminder that other infrastructure exists, that the self-contained world of the sleeper cab is chosen for this work, but not mandatory. Not yet. The driver doesn't linger, doesn't buy anything, doesn't socialize. This trip was functional, essential, now finished. The cold wait outside, back through the facility, through the vestibule. The door opens outward, the cold returns, just as sharp as before. The brief warmth inside made no lasting difference. The driver's body must adjust again. The flashlight comes back on. The return journey begins, retracing the same path, the same careful steps, the same attention to ice and ruts and uneven snow. Other drivers still move through the lot, different individuals now. The rotation continuous throughout the night. The truck appears ahead, running lights marking its position, exhaust still rising. The familiar shape. The driver's boots crunch through the last stretch of snow, hand on the cold door handle. The lock disengages, the door opens, the warmth from inside spills out. Still there, still maintained by the heating systems. The driver climbs up, steps inside, closes the door, seals it. The outside cuts off. The cold stops at the threshold, boots unlaced, jacket unzipped, hat removed, gloves peeled off. The winter gear piles near the door, ready for morning, ready for the pre-trip inspection. But not needed again tonight, not unless emergency demands it. The driver's hands, slightly numb from the walk, begin to tingle as circulation fully returns. The face, red from cold, starts to fade back to normal colour. The body's core temperature, temporarily challenged, stabilizes. The trip is complete, the last necessary interaction with the winter night. Everything needed is now inside this space. Water, food, warmth, shelter. The truck stop and its facilities remain available, but barring emergency, the sleeper cab becomes complete unto itself. The evening can continue. The preparation for sleep can advance. The outside world, with its dangerous cold and its darkness and its ice, can be held at distance. The door is locked. The curtains are drawn. The heating systems maintain their work. The driver settles back into the routine, into the specific sequence of actions that transforms this industrial sleeper compartment into something approaching a bedroom. The walking is done. The cold has been confronted and survived. Now comes the softer part of the evening, the gradual movement toward rest. Back inside the cab, the driver sheds the heavy coat and hangs it where condensation from the outside cold can evaporate without dripping onto bedding. Boots go near the heating vent. The cold from that brief walk across the parking lot has created a sharp contrast. The cab's interior feels almost tropical now, though the thermometer mounted near the bunk reads only 68 degrees. Hunger arrives on schedule. The driver retrieves a 12-volt lunchbox oven from its storage spot beneath the bunk. This rectangular metal container, about the size of a large toolbox, plugs directly into the cigarette lighter outlet. It draws considerable current, but produces reliable heat, enough to warm a meal over 30 to 40 minutes without requiring an inverter or risking a blown fuse. Tonight's meal is canned beef stew, transferred this morning into a small glass container that fits the oven's interior dimensions. The driver learned years ago that preparation matters. Food placed in the lunchbox frozen or refrigerator cold takes twice as long to heat. Room temperature ingredients reach eating temperature in a predictable time frame. The oven clicks on, its heating element begins its work. The driver sets a timer on the phone, 35 minutes, and returns to the logbook paperwork spread across the passenger seat. The cab gradually fills with the smell of warming food, beef, potatoes, carrots, the particular metallic edge of canned vegetables. It mingles with the diesel smell that never fully leaves a truck's interior and the faint plastic scent of the heating system working at capacity. Some drivers use small microwaves powered by inverters, faster but requiring more electrical infrastructure. Others favour portable induction cooktops for actual cooking. The lunchbox oven represents a middle path, slow, simple, drawing power the truck's electrical system provides without modification. As the timer counts down, condensation begins appearing on the cab's windows despite the insulated covers. The moisture from the heating food meets cold glass and creates fog patterns at the edges where insulation doesn't fully seal. The driver wipes a small viewing port clear with a cloth kept for this purpose. Outside, nothing has changed. Snow continues falling through the amber wash of parking lot lights. The timer sounds. The driver opens the lunchbox carefully. The steam that emerges carries real heat. The glass container comes out with gloved hands. The stew bubbles at its edges, too hot to eat immediately, which suits the schedule perfectly. While the meal cools to edible temperature, the driver prepares the eating surface. A wooden cutting board, 12 inches square, serves as a stable platform across the lap. A towel underneath protects against spills. The spoon comes from a cleaned yogurt cup that holds utensils near the small sink. The first bites deliver warmth from the inside. The body registers food temperature as fuel and comfort simultaneously. On winter nights, a hot meal serves purposes beyond nutrition. It raises core temperature, provides psychological comfort, creates a sense of normalcy and routine in an environment that is fundamentally neither normal nor routine. The driver eats slowly. There is no hurry. The night stretches ahead, with nothing required except rest. Each spoonful continues the warming process. The stew isn't elaborate. The canned variety never achieves what homemade provides, but it fulfills its function. From a small cabinet, the driver retrieves a thermos filled earlier in the evening at the truck stop. Hot coffee, prepared with enough cream and sugar to make it calorie-dense. This will sit within reach through the night. Waking at 2 or 3 in the morning often brings a desire for something warm. The thermos culture runs deep among winter drivers, something hot, always ready, requiring no preparation in the middle of sleep. The meal finished, the driver rinses the glass container in the small sink, using water warmed by running it through hands first. Cold water in winter can shock dishware enough to crack it. The lunchbox oven goes back in its storage spot, still slightly warm. Outside, another truck pulls in, the rumble of its engine distinct from the steady hum of the APU beneath this cab. The driver glances out the cleared viewing port. The new arrival parks 3 spots away, its marker lights reflecting off fresh snow. In a few minutes, that driver will likely be doing something similar, heating food, checking fuel, arranging the small space for sleep. The phone sits charging on the narrow shelf. The driver picks it up to check the weather forecast one more time before settling in fully. The map shows the same system that brought today's snow continuing through tomorrow morning. Road conditions will be slower. Chains might be required in the mountain pass 160 miles ahead. But that is tomorrow's concern. Tonight, the cab is warm. The meal has done its work. The thermos sits ready. The heating systems maintain their steady output. The driver wipes condensation from the windows one more time, adjusts the insulated covers, and begins the transition towards sleep. The phone screen illuminates the cab's interior with pale blue light. The driver settles against the propped pillows, still dressed in the base layers and fleece that will serve as sleep clothing, and opens the messaging app. The evening check-in follows a pattern established over years, modified by circumstances but never skipped. The first message goes to home. A photo, the view through the windshield, snow visible in the parking lot lights, the row of trucks stretching into darkness. The text is brief. Parked for the night, Iowa 80, storm moving through, but I'm off the road and warm. The response arrives within minutes. The family back home has learned to watch for this evening message, especially in winter. It signals safety, the day's driving finished, the transition to stillness. The conversation that follows covers familiar ground, how the kids are doing, what's happening in a world that feels very distant from this truck stop, questions about tomorrow's route and timeline. The driver types responses one-handed, the phone positioned on a mount attached to the cabinet beside the bunk. This hands-free arrangement keeps the device stable and prevents the fumbling that comes from trying to hold something while cocooned in blankets. The conversation continues for 15 or 20 minutes, longer than it might on easier nights because winter adds weight to the interaction. Everyone involved knows the stakes of highway travel when temperatures drop and snow accumulates. Other calls get made. A brief check-in with the dispatcher, confirming tomorrow's delivery window and reporting that tonight's shutdown came slightly earlier than planned because parking filled quickly. The dispatcher understands. Winter changes calculations. Better to stop with daylight remaining than to push into darkness, searching for a space that might not exist. On some routes, in some regions, the driver would call ahead to other truckers known to frequent certain stops. The CB radio serves this function too. Monitoring Channel 19 provides a constant stream of information about road conditions, accident delays, where parking remains available. But tonight, with snow continuing and the entire parking lot already full, by 6 p.m. there's no need. Everyone is where they'll stay until morning. The phone also provides entertainment, though the driver approaches this carefully. Too much screen time before sleep disrupts rest. The blue light interferes with natural sleep preparation, a fact learned through experience on nights when scrolling continued too long. Instead, the evening ritual includes a set endpoint, communications finish by 7:30, entertainment limited to audio. A podcast plays through a small Bluetooth speaker mounted near the bunk. The subject matter is deliberately unexciting. A history program about agricultural development, detailed enough to hold attention, but not so engaging that sleep becomes difficult. The voice of the narrator fills the cab, providing human speech without requiring interaction. Outside, the wind has picked up. The cab rocks slightly when gusts arrive. The driver notices but doesn't worry. These trucks sit high on their suspensions, and movement is normal. The APU beneath the cab maintains its rhythm unchanged. The heating system continues pushing warm air through the vent. Around 8 p.m., the driver sets the phone aside and reaches for the tablet, mounted on an adjustable arm, extending from the cabinet. This device, larger than the phone, holds downloaded movies and shows for nights when sleep arrives slowly. But it also serves another purpose: video calls. The driver opens the app and places a call home. The screen connects to show the kitchen table, the familiar background that hasn't changed since this route began 6 weeks ago. The family gathering in front of the camera has become its own ritual. Everyone present, faces visible, a few minutes of seeing each other, rather than just voices and text. The conversation covers the same territory as the earlier messages, but with additional warmth. The driver asks about school projects and shows them the view outside, rotating the tablet to capture the snow falling through the parking lot lights, the line of trucks, the particular stillness of this winter night. They ask if the cab is warm enough, if there's enough food, when the next home time begins, 12 more days. The driver reminds them of the calendar, already marked and counted down. 12 days of routes and deliveries and nights like this one, then a week at home before starting again. The call ends with the usual words: drive safe, stay warm, we love you. The screen goes dark. The driver returns the tablet to its mounted position and sits quietly for a moment, adjusting to the solitude that follows connection. The CB radio mounted in the front cab occasionally crackles with transmissions, drivers sharing information, asking about conditions ahead, the informal network that operates constantly on the highways. The driver can hear it faintly through the curtain separating the sleeper from the driver's seat. Most of it is routine. Nothing requires action or response. The podcast has ended. The driver scrolls through the audio library and selects another, something about early railroad construction, narrated in the same measured tone that won't interfere with the drift towards sleep. The thermos of coffee sits on the narrow shelf. The driver pours a small amount into the thermos cup, drinks it slowly, and replaces the cap. The warmth of the liquid is part of the settling process, one more component of the preparation for night. The phone gets set to do not disturb mode, with exceptions only for family and dispatch. The screen dims to its lowest setting. The time shows 8:45. Outside, the snow continues. Inside, the cab has reached its warmest point. The heating systems having worked for hours now, the insulation doing its job, the small space holding temperature against the cold, pressing from every direction. The driver adjusts the pillows, pulls the first blanket up, and lets the audio continue playing quietly. The connection to home has been made. The check-ins are complete. The world outside this cab knows the driver is safe, stationary, prepared for the night ahead. In 300 other trucks in this parking lot, similar rituals have likely concluded. Each driver managing their own evening routine, their own communications, their own preparations. The solitude is shared, paradoxically. Hundreds of people alone together, separated by metal walls and individual lives, but united in the basic pattern of the long-haul night. The driver reaches for a plastic gallon jug stored near the heating vent. The water inside is cold, not frozen, but cold enough to feel sharp against the fingers. The jug has been sitting here since the last truck stop, picked up with this specific purpose in mind. Winter complicates the simple acts. The things done without thought in a house with running water require planning here, require adaptation. The driver pours a small amount into a metal pot, perhaps 2 cups, and sets it on the 12-volt heating plate. The element glows orange beneath the pot. The water will take 15 minutes to reach a temperature warm enough for washing, not hot, warm enough. While the water heats, the driver retrieves a package of no-rinse body wipes from the storage compartment. These wipes, thick, pre-moistened cloths that don't require rinsing, have become standard equipment for long-haul drivers. They work. They serve their purpose. But on a night this cold, even a wipe at room temperature feels cold against skin. The heated water makes the difference. When the pot is ready, the driver dampens a washcloth in the warm water and begins the abbreviated washing routine. Face first, neck, under the arms. The basic geography of cleanliness. The washcloth cools quickly in the air, requiring frequent returns to the pot. The process is methodical, efficient, nothing wasted. Steam rises from the pot. The moisture enters the air of the sleeper cab, a small addition to the humidity already present. Breath creates moisture. Body heat creates moisture. The sealed cab traps it all. Condensation is the constant opponent in winter sleeping spaces. The driver glances at the walls of the sleeper cab, at the points where cold exterior metal meets warm interior air. These junctions collect moisture. If ignored, condensation pools, runs down walls, dampens bedding, creates the conditions for mold in the insulation, for rust in the metal, for cold, wet spots that make sleep miserable. The management of this moisture is not automatic. It requires attention. Some drivers crack a window slightly, a 1/4 inch, perhaps to allow moisture to escape. This introduces cold air but prevents the buildup of condensation. The balance is delicate. Too much ventilation and the heating system struggles to maintain comfort. Too little and moisture accumulates. The driver adjusts the small vent in the roof of the sleeper cab, opening it slightly. Cold air will enter through this opening, but it will pull the moisture-laden air upward and out. The heating system will compensate. This is the practiced solution. The washcloth goes into a plastic bag. It will be dealt with at the next truck stop with laundry facilities. The pot of water, now cooled, is carried to the front cab and poured out the driver's side door onto the pavement below. The water splashes onto ice, freezes within minutes. The driver returns to the sleeper and retrieves the dry shampoo. The aerosol can is cold from storage but functions. A few sprays into the hair, worked through with fingertips, and the oil is absorbed. It is not the same as washing, but it is sufficient. It serves. Dental care next. The driver uses a bottle of drinking water for this. The heated water was for washing only, brushing. spitting into a small container. The container will be emptied outside. Nothing goes into the cab's interior that might create odour or attract pests during the days and weeks of living here. The driver changes into sleep clothes now, thermal underwear, a long-sleeve shirt, thick socks. These clothes are kept in a specific storage bin, separate from the outer layers worn for walking outside, separate from the clothes worn for driving. The organisation prevents contamination, keeps the sleeping clothes as clean as possible for as long as possible. Near the head of the bunk, the driver has arranged a change of clothes for emergency. Heavy pants, a sweatshirt, thick socks, boots within reach on the floor. If the heating system fails during the night, if the APU stops, or the bunk heater malfunctions, these clothes can be pulled on quickly without needing to search in the dark. This preparation is not paranoia. It is experience. Drivers have stories of heaters failing at 2 in the morning when the outside temperature is 10 below zero. Stories of waking to frost forming on the inside of the windows to breathe visible in the beam of a flashlight. The emergency clothes are insurance, worn rarely, but essential to have near. The driver checks the carbon monoxide detector mounted on the wall. The small LED glows green. The detector is battery-powered, independent of the truck's electrical system. It is tested weekly. The batteries are changed on a schedule. Carbon monoxide is invisible, odourless, and deadly. The confined space of a sleeper cab with multiple fuel-burning heating systems makes the detector non-negotiable. The final preparation is the simplest. The driver places a bottle of water within reach of the bunk. The air inside the heated cab is dry. Thirst will come during the night. The water is there. Everything needed is now within arm's reach. The hygiene routine is complete. The moisture is managed. The emergency preparations are in place. The space is ready for sleep. The driver sits on the edge of the bunk and looks around the small compartment. This is as comfortable as it will get. This is home for tonight. The bunk measures 36 inches wide and 76 inches long in this particular truck. The mattress that came with the cab when it was purchased is still here. A 4-inch foam pad with vinyl covering. Standard equipment, adequate for a few nights, insufficient for a life spent mostly in this space. The driver has added layers. First came the mattress topper, a 3-inch memory foam pad ordered online and delivered to a truck stop in Ohio 3 years ago. The topper transformed the bunk, softened the rigid foam beneath, provided enough cushioning that the driver's hip no longer ached after 8 hours of sleep. The cost was $120, worth every dollar. Over the topper, a fitted sheet in dark blue. The colour is practical, shows dirt less readily than white. The sheet is changed weekly when laundry facilities are available. A spare sheet is stored in the compartment beneath the bunk, ready for rotation. The flat sheet above is flannel, soft against skin, warmer than cotton. The driver has 2 of these sheets, one in use, one in the laundry bag. Both are the same pattern, small checks in blue and grey. The pattern was not chosen for aesthetics. It was chosen because replacement sheets in this exact pattern can be ordered online. Consistency matters. Familiarity matters. 2 blankets are layered above the sheet. The first is a thin fleece blanket, forest green, lightweight enough to fold easily but warm enough to provide the initial layer of insulation. This blanket is used year-round. In summer it is often sufficient alone. In winter, it is the foundation for additional layers. The second blanket is wool, heavy, grey, military surplus. The driver purchased it at a truck stop in Montana for $40 from another driver who was retiring. Wool retains warmth even when damp. Wool breathes. Wool is heavy enough to stay in place when the driver shifts position during the night. This blanket has become the primary layer for winter sleeping. Tucked into the storage net at the foot of the bunk is a sleeping bag rated to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. The bag is compressed into a stuff sack. It is rarely used, but it is there. If the heating systems fail completely, if the temperature inside the cab drops despite all efforts, the driver will crawl into that bag and survive until morning, until help can be called, until the situation can be resolved. The pillow is personal, particular. The driver tried the standard truck stop pillows for the first 6 months, too flat, too thin, offered no support. The driver tried a memory foam pillow next, too firm, too hot, created a crick in the neck. The current pillow is filled with shredded foam and can be adjusted by removing or adding fill. The driver has tuned it precisely. This pillow travels everywhere, gets its own space in the cab, is not used for anything except sleep. A second pillow, smaller, is wedged between the bunk and the wall. This pillow is for side sleeping, tucked between the knees. It prevents the lower back pain that develops from the awkward positions required in a narrow bunk. At the head of the bunk, mounted on the wall with adhesive strips, are photographs, 3 photographs. The first shows 2 children, a boy and a girl, standing in front of a swing set. Summer, sunlight. The children are smiling. They are older now than they are in this photograph. The photo is 6 years old, but this is the image the driver sees before sleep each night. The second photograph shows a woman sitting on a porch step. She's not looking at the camera. She's looking at something beyond the frame. Her expression is calm. The photograph is slightly overexposed. The colours a bit washed out. The driver took this photograph, printed it at a pharmacy, mounted it here. The third photograph shows a dog, a large brown dog lying in grass. The dog has been dead for 4 years. The photograph remains. These photographs are not decorative, they are functional. They are reminders of the reason the driver is here, in this truck, in this parking lot, in this life. A small fabric curtain hangs along the side wall of the bunk. Behind the curtain is a rod with 4 hangers. The clothes hanging here are the clean clothes, the shirts worn for walking into truck stops, the spare jeans, the jacket that is not the heavy winter jacket. These clothes are kept separate from the bedding by the curtain. The curtain prevents dust and odours from settling on the bed. Mounted on the opposite wall is a small LED reading light with a flexible neck. The light is powered by the truck's electrical system. It can be positioned directly over a book or a phone. It provides enough light to read without illuminating the entire sleeper cab. The driver uses this light every night. A phone charger is plugged into the 12-volt outlet near the head of the bunk. The cable is long enough to reach comfortably while lying down. The phone stays charged, always. The phone is the connection to the outside, the lifeline. Tucked into a mesh pocket near the pillow are the essentials kept close during sleep: a flashlight, a pocket knife, the truck keys, a small notepad and pen for the thoughts that sometimes arrive in the dark hours and must be recorded before they vanish. The driver has arranged this space over 3 years. Every item has been chosen. Every position has been adjusted. This is not a hotel room. This is not temporary lodging. This is where the driver lives. The space is small. The space is efficient. The space is, in its way, home. The interior temperature hovers near 70 degrees. The heating systems hum steadily. Everything suggests a warm, stable night ahead. And yet the driver does not change into summer weight pajamas, does not strip down to a t-shirt and shorts as one might at home with a thermostat-controlled furnace running reliably just beyond the bedroom wall. Instead, the driver pulls on a set of thermal base layers, long underwear, essentially, the kind designed for skiing or winter hiking. The fabric fits close to the skin, thin enough to be comfortable under blankets, warm enough to matter if something goes wrong. This is the insurance policy written in clothing. A truck's heating systems are robust. They are designed for exactly this purpose. They run thousands of nights without incident. But they are mechanical systems operating in brutal conditions, subject to the stress of constant vibration, of temperature extremes, of components that can fail. The auxiliary power unit could develop a fault. The diesel heater could cycle off. The battery bank could deplete faster than expected. The main engine could experience a problem that requires shutdown. And outside, the temperature sits at 12 below zero. The calculus is simple. The risk is small, but the consequence is severe. So the driver wears base layers to bed. These are not heavy expedition weight garments, just a moderate layer that traps body heat, that gives a buffer zone of warmth, that buys time. If the heat fails at 2 in the morning, the driver will not wake instantly to dangerous cold. Will have minutes, perhaps an hour, to recognize the problem, to troubleshoot, to move to backup systems or to take emergency measures. The base layers also serve another function. They manage moisture. A sleeper cab in winter is a sealed environment. Human breathing releases water vapor. Perspiration happens even during sleep. Without some wicking fabric against the skin, condensation can accumulate, dampness can develop, and damp fabric in cold becomes a liability rather than insulation. So the synthetic thermal shirt and pants pull moisture away, keep the skin dry, maintain the integrity of the insulation system. Within arm's reach of the bed, folded on a small shelf, sits a complete set of warm clothes, a fleece pullover, insulated pants, thick socks. These are not morning clothes selected for convenience. These are positioned for emergency access. If the heat fails, if carbon monoxide detector sounds, if some crisis requires immediate evacuation of the sleeper berth in the middle of the night, the driver can dress in seconds without fumbling through storage compartments in darkness. A winter hat, a simple knit beanie, rests on the same shelf. The human head radiates enormous heat relative to its surface area. In genuine cold, an uncovered head loses warmth at a rate that can prevent the rest of the body from maintaining core temperature, no matter how many blankets cover the torso. Many drivers sleep with the hat already on. Others keep it within immediate reach. Heavy winter boots stand on the floor directly beside the bed, positioned so the driver can slip feet into them without sitting up, without turning on lights, without fully waking. Not the everyday boots which might be in a compartment or near the cab's door. These are the serious cold weather boots, rated for extreme temperatures. Because stepping outside in an emergency, wearing only socks or wearing inadequate footwear can cause frostbite damage in the time it takes to walk to a truck stop building. The driver's heavy winter coat hangs on a hook mounted to the sleeper wall, not stored in a compartment, not folded away, hanging ready. Within a few seconds of waking, the driver can be dressed for survival in negative temperatures. This may seem like excessive preparation. After all, the heating systems are running perfectly. The fuel tank is 3/4 full. The truck stop building is visible through the window, perhaps 100 yards across the lot. Everything is under control, but drivers who survive decades of winter nights on the road do not trust everything is under control. They have heard the stories. They know what can happen. They prepare for the unlikely scenario because the unlikely scenario, when it occurs in winter, becomes deadly very quickly. This is not paranoia. This is calibrated risk management born from experience. So the driver lies down in base layers, with warm clothes positioned within reach, with boots ready to step into, with the winter hat available, with the heavy coat hanging close, comfortable but ready, warm but protected, prepared to sleep soundly through a peaceful night, but equipped to respond if the night becomes something other than peaceful. The bedding is arranged, the backup clothing is positioned, the driver is dressed appropriately for sleeping in a metal box surrounded by sub-zero air, dependent on mechanical systems to maintain the envelope of warmth. Now comes the next layer of the sleeping system, the blankets themselves. The bed is made with multiple blankets, not one heavy comforter, not a single thick quilt, multiple separate layers, 3 blankets in this driver's system, a thin fleece closest to the body, a medium-weight wool blend in the middle, a heavier synthetic fill blanket on top. This is not arbitrary. This is engineering. Multiple layers create air pockets between them. Those trapped air spaces provide insulation that a single thick blanket cannot match. The air itself becomes part of the warmth system, heated by body temperature, held in place by the fabric above and below. But the greater advantage is adjustability. Through the night, the sleeper cab's temperature will fluctuate slightly. The heating system cycles on and off. The driver's own metabolism shifts between sleep stages. The external temperature outside may drop further, or the wind may change. With multiple separate blankets, the driver can modify the insulation level without fully waking. If slightly too warm, push the top blanket toward the foot of the bed. If a bit cool during the deep night hours, pull it back up. Add or subtract layers as needed. A single heavy comforter offers no such flexibility. It's an all-or-nothing proposition. Too warm means throwing it off entirely and risking getting too cold. Too cold means enduring it, because there's no intermediate option. The layered system allows subtle adjustments, allows the driver to maintain that specific temperature zone where sleep stays deep and uninterrupted. Beside the pillow, within easy reach, lies something else. A mummy-style sleeping bag, compressed into a stuff sack, rated for 15 degrees below zero. This is the backup that sits behind the backup. If the heating systems fail entirely, if the auxiliary power unit stops, if the diesel heater malfunctions, if some cascade of problems shuts down the primary warmth sources, the driver can deploy this sleeping bag in seconds, can climb inside with the base layers already being worn, can zip it closed, can survive the night, even as the interior temperature of the cab drops toward the outside ambient level. This is not comfortable. This is not the plan. But it is possible. The sleeping bag represents the final insurance policy. the last line of defense against a winter night that turns dangerous. Some drivers carry sleeping bags rated for even more extreme conditions, -20 degrees, -40. These are not excessive precautions for drivers who regularly travel through Montana, North Dakota, northern Minnesota, or Canada during deep winter. These are regions where a disabled truck in a roadside emergency could mean waiting hours for help while exposed to temperatures that can kill. But tonight, in this truck stop, with systems running normally, the sleeping bag stays in its stuff sack. It is present, it is ready, but it is not needed. Instead, the driver arranges the 3 blankets, making sure each layer covers fully, making sure there are no gaps where cold could infiltrate, making sure the edges tuck properly to contain the warmth. One additional element appears in many sleeper cabs during winter, an electric blanket plugged into the truck's inverter system, drawing power from the battery bank. The driver does not set this to high heat, does not use it as a primary warming source. That would drain batteries too quickly, would create a dependency on something that could fail. Instead, the electric blanket runs on its lowest setting, barely warm to the touch, and it sits between 2 of the regular blankets. It provides just a gentle, supplemental heat, a subtle boost that takes pressure off the main heating systems, that adds a layer of redundancy without creating new vulnerabilities. If the power fails, the regular blankets still function. If the heating systems fail, the electric blanket can be turned higher temporarily. The system degrades gracefully, rather than collapsing all at once. The pillow itself is substantial, not a thin, decorative pillow, but something that provides real support. Sleep quality matters when you will spend 10 or 11 hours behind the wheel tomorrow. The neck needs proper alignment. The head needs cushioning. Some drivers bring pillows from home. Others purchase high-end camping or ergonomic pillows. This is not luxury. This is occupational health equipment. The final element of the bedding system is the sheet itself, the bottom layer. Many drivers use flannel sheets in winter rather than cotton. Flannel's brushed surface traps more air, provides more warmth, feels less shocking against skin during the initial moments of climbing into bed. Everything is positioned now. The base layers are worn, the emergency clothes are within reach, the multiple blankets are arranged, the sleeping bag is available if needed. The electric blanket adds its gentle warmth. The pillow supports the head properly. The driver is ready to sleep, ready for a normal, peaceful night, but also ready for the night that doesn't go as planned. Protected by layers of preparation, by redundant systems, by the accumulated wisdom of people who have learned what can go wrong when you sleep in a metal box parked in sub-zero cold. The overhead light clicks off. The interior lights click off one by one. First, the overhead dome light, then the small reading lamp clipped to the bunk frame. Finally, the glowing screen of the phone goes dark and is placed face down on the small shelf within arm's reach. In the sudden absence of light, other sensations sharpen. The darkness inside the sleeper cab is nearly complete. The blackout curtains block any illumination from the truck stop's perimeter lights. Only the faintest glow, a tiny LED on the APU control panel, the distant reflection of amber parking lights against snow, provides any visual reference at all. The driver's eyes begin to adjust, but there's little to see. This is a darkness that invites focus inward, toward warmth and rest, rather than outward observation. But the cab is not silent. The auxiliary power unit beneath the sleeper maintains its steady mechanical hum. It's a sound that has become deeply familiar over months or years on the road, a rhythmic drone that sits at the edge of perception. For experienced drivers, this sound transforms into something almost comforting. A mechanical heartbeat that signals warmth and power reserves. The pitch remains constant. The vibration travels through the frame and into the mattress, subtle but present. Some drivers report that they sleep poorly in hotels because the absence of this vibration feels wrong, too still, as if something essential is missing. The engine idle if the driver has chosen to leave the main diesel running rather than rely solely on the APU adds a deeper layer. It's a slower rhythm, a bass note beneath the APU's higher frequency. Together, these sounds create a kind of white noise, not silence, but a blanket of consistent sound that masks other disturbances and helps settle the mind towards sleep. Outside, the truck stop continues its nighttime existence. Refrigerated trailers parked in their designated areas cycle through their cooling systems. These reefer units produce a distinctive sound pattern. The diesel engine that powers the refrigeration unit runs for several minutes, then shuts off, then starts again when the temperature inside the trailer rises. The cycle repeats throughout the night. The sound carries across the parking lot, a distant mechanical punctuation. Drivers learn to park away from these units when possible, seeking the quieter perimeter spaces where the cycling engines are less intrusive. Occasionally, the sound of another truck arriving interrupts the pattern. The air brakes release with a distinctive hiss. An engine shuts down, a door opens and closes, footsteps crunch through snow. Another driver making the same transition from operator to resident, seeking the same warmth and rest. The wind presses against the cab's exterior. On calm nights this pressure is barely noticeable, but when winter storms move through, the wind becomes a presence. It pushes against the flat surfaces of the trailer and the cab, creating a gentle rocking motion. The suspension absorbs most of the movement, but the cab sways slightly, almost imperceptibly. For some drivers, this gentle motion is soothing, reminiscent of being rocked to sleep. For others, particularly in strong winds, it's a reminder of the cab's exposure, its position as a tall metal structure standing in an open lot. The metal of the cab itself makes sounds as temperatures shift. The contraction and expansion of aluminum and steel produce occasional ticks and creaks. These sounds are more common during the first hour after parking, when the cab is still adjusting to the outside temperature after hours of generated heat while driving. A tick near the roof, a creak along the doorframe, small adjustments as metal settles. Then, as the interior stabilizes at its sleeping temperature, these sounds become less frequent. The driver lies still, warm beneath layers of blankets, and listens. The soundscape becomes familiar. The APU hum, the distant reefers, the wind, the occasional arrival or departure. These sounds, rather than disturbing sleep, begin to define the environment. They become the audio texture of this particular night, this particular truck stop, this particular winter evening, and beneath all of it, or perhaps because of it, there is a kind of peace. The driver is alone but surrounded, isolated but part of a network of similar solitudes. The sounds confirm that systems are functioning, that heat continues to flow, that the night is progressing as it should. Sleep, when it comes, arrives gradually, not as a sudden switch, but as a slow settling. The body relaxes into the warmth. The mind releases the day's navigation and decisions. The sounds fade from conscious awareness into background, still present, but no longer noticed. The darkness holds. Outside the sealed windows and insulated walls of the sleeper cab, snow continues to fall. It has been falling since late afternoon, and now, deep into the evening, it has accumulated. The truck stop parking lot is covered. The walkways, ploughed once at dusk, are filling in again. The hoods and roofs of parked trucks wear thick white caps. The snow falls steadily, without drama, adding inch after quiet inch. Snow changes sound. Fresh snow, particularly the dry, powdery snow that falls when temperatures drop well below freezing, absorbs sound in a way that few other natural phenomena can match. The intricate structure of snowflakes, their branching crystals and the air pockets trapped between them, creates millions of tiny, sound-dampening surfaces. Noise that would normally travel across pavement and reflect off metal is instead absorbed, softened, muffled. The truck stop, which during clear nights maintains a certain level of ambient sound, the background hum of activity, the echo of movement, becomes quieter under snow. The cycling of refrigerated units sounds more distant, less sharp. Footsteps that would normally click or scrape against pavement are transformed into soft crunches, then fade to barely audible compressions. Even the wind, when it moves through falling snow, seems to carry sound differently, as if the air itself has changed texture. This acoustic dampening creates an unusual quality of isolation. The truck, already a self-contained unit, feels even more separate from its surroundings. The sounds that do penetrate the cab's walls arrive softer, less distinct. The world outside feels farther away, not just physically, but perceptually. The driver, warm in the sleeper bunk, experiences this additional layer of separation. The snow is creating a buffer, a sound barrier that enhances the sense of being in a protected refuge. The visual aspect reinforces this feeling. When the driver woke briefly, an hour after settling in to adjust a blanket, a glance toward the small gap in the blackout curtain revealed the snow still falling through the amber glow of the parking lot lights. The flakes descended steadily, caught in that light, each one visible for a moment before disappearing into the accumulated white below. It was a scene of continuous, quiet motion, beautiful in its simplicity, and it confirmed that the outside world had transformed into something softer, slower, more forgiving than the frozen highways and ice-covered rest stops of earlier in the evening. Snow also changes the temperature dynamics around the truck. As it accumulates on the cab's roof and against its sides, it adds a layer of insulation. Snow, because of the air trapped within it, insulates remarkably well. The driver won't notice this as a dramatic change. The heating systems maintain the interior temperature regardless, but the rate at which heat escapes through the cab's metal skin slows slightly. The frost patterns on the interior of the windshield, which form where warm interior air meets cold glass, despite the insulated covers, may grow slightly less aggressive as the snow outside provides its accidental insulation. Inside the cab, the driver remains unaware of most of this. Sleep has returned after the brief waking. The blankets hold warmth close. The heating system continues its work. But somewhere in the background of consciousness, the particular quality of the night registers. The sounds are softer, the world feels more distant. The snow, invisible now in the darkness, continues to fall and accumulate, creating its layer of quiet over everything. This is one of the paradoxes of winter truck stop nights. The cold outside is dangerous, requiring constant vigilance and preparation. Yet the snow that accompanies that cold creates moments of unexpected peace. The harsh environment produces a kind of beauty. The isolation, which could feel threatening, instead feels protective. The driver sleeps in a metal box in a parking lot, surrounded by other metal boxes, but the falling snow makes it feel somehow more like rest in a sheltered place removed from the ordinary world. The snow will complicate morning. It will need to be cleared from mirrors and lights. The pre-trip inspection will take longer. The roads may be slow. But that is tomorrow's concern. Tonight, the snow falls silently, absorbs sound, and adds its own particular quiet to the winter night. The truck stands beneath it, lights glowing softly, heat contained within, driver sleeping in layered warmth, while the accumulation continues inch by silent inch until morning. The warmth inside the sleeper cab is not uniform. It never is. Heat gathers near the vents and radiates outward in gradients, creating zones of different temperatures within the small space. The driver knows these zones without thinking about them. The area closest to the heater stays warmest, sometimes almost too warm, requiring a slight adjustment of blankets. The far corners, particularly near the exterior walls, hold cooler air. The difference might be only 10 or 15 degrees, but it's noticeable when a hand emerges from beneath the covers or when shifting position brings an uncovered shoulder near the outer wall. This gradient becomes part of the sleeping experience. The driver's core stays warm beneath layers of bedding, but extremities require attention. Feet, farthest from the heating source, often need extra insulation. Some drivers wear socks to bed despite preferring not to. Others tuck a spare blanket around the foot of the sleeping area. Cold air settles, and even with heating systems running steadily, the floor area retains a chill. The driver's face remains exposed to the cooler air. This contrast, warm body, cool face, creates the conditions many people find ideal for sleep. Too much warmth becomes stifling in the enclosed space. The slightly cool air moving across the face provides relief and makes the warmth of the blankets more satisfying. When wind gusts press against the cab's exterior, a faint coolness radiates through the insulated walls, a reminder of the temperature difference between inside and outside. Condensation requires management even with heating systems running. Moisture from breathing accumulates in the sealed environment. It appears as fog on windows, dampness on cold surfaces. Drivers who sleep in winter cabs regularly know to crack a roof vent slightly, allowing minimal air exchange. The small opening lets moisture escape without surrendering significant heat. The alternative, waking to windows wet with condensation, bedding feeling damp, disrupts sleep and creates discomfort that lingers into morning. The cab moves slightly in strong wind. The sensation is subtle, a gentle rocking that some drivers find soothing and others barely notice after years on the road. When gusts arrive, the entire truck sways slightly on its suspension. The movement is not dramatic, not like a ship in waves, but it's present. The tall profile of a semi-truck catches wind, and the vehicle responds. On particularly stormy nights, this rocking becomes more pronounced, and the driver feels the truck settle and shift beneath them. Temperature fluctuates through the night if the heating system cycles on and off. Battery-powered systems often run on timers or thermostats, creating periods of active heating followed by gradual cooling until the next cycle begins. The driver becomes accustomed to this rhythm. The heater kicks on with a small vibration or a change in the background hum. Warmth increases, then silence as the system shuts off, and a slow decline in temperature until the thermostat triggers another cycle. These fluctuations rarely wake an experienced driver, but they shape the physical experience of the night. The body adjusting automatically, pulling blankets tighter during cooler phases, loosening them when warmth builds. Time loses its usual markers inside the sleeper cab after midnight. No natural light penetrates the covered windows. No schedule imposes structure on these hours. The driver exists in a space outside normal time, where 3 a.m. feels indistinguishable from 1 a.m., except by checking the clock's glowing numbers. Sleep comes in segments for many drivers. Years of irregular schedules and varying time zones have taught the body to rest when possible, rather than in single, unbroken blocks. The driver wakes sometime in the deep night, perhaps around 3, perhaps earlier or later. The waking is gentle, not jarring, eyes open in complete darkness. For a moment there's only awareness of warmth and the steady background sounds of the heating system. The driver reaches for the phone to check the time. The screen's light is harsh in the absolute darkness, and eyes squint against it. 2:47 a.m. or 3:23 a.m. The specific numbers matter less than confirming there are still hours before morning. The phone goes dark again. The driver listens. Wind has changed. The sound against the cab's exterior has shifted, stronger now, with a lower pitch. Snow intensity may have increased, though it's impossible to see through the covered windows without getting up. The driver doesn't get up. The change in wind is noted and filed away, relevant for tomorrow's driving conditions but not urgent now. Other sounds filter through the walls. A reefer unit cycles on somewhere in the lot, its diesel engine rumbling to life before settling into a steady drone. The sound is distant enough to blend into the background. Closer, there's the creak of metal, the truck's own frame responding to temperature and wind. These sounds are familiar. They confirm that systems are functioning, that the night is proceeding as expected. The driver adjusts the blankets, pulling them higher around the shoulders where a draft of cooler air has found its way in. This adjustment happens half-consciously, the body seeking optimal comfort without fully engaging the mind. The heating system's warmth continues its work. The temperature inside the cab feels stable, perhaps slightly cooler than earlier in the evening, but still comfortable. From somewhere across the lot comes the sound of an engine starting, not the idle of a parked truck, but the full roar of a driver beginning their day. The sound grows briefly louder as the truck maneuvers through the lot, then fades as it reaches the exit and turns toward the highway. Some drivers start before dawn to reach delivery points by early morning. Their schedules dictate a 3 a.m. departure. The sound of their leaving becomes part of the night's texture, a reminder that the truck stop never fully sleeps. The driver listens to the changed pitch of the wind, the distant reefer, the settling of the cab's metal structure. Outside, snow continues to fall. This much is certain from the muffled quality of all external sounds. Snow absorbs noise in a way rain doesn't, creating an acoustic signature the driver recognizes. The world beyond the truck feels distant and muted, as though the cab exists in a pocket of space separate from the storm. Sleep returns gradually. There's no effort to force it, no frustration if it takes minutes to arrive. The driver has learned patience with these night wakings. Eyes close again, breathing deepens. The warmth, the steady mechanical hum, the darkness, all of it supports the drift back into unconsciousness. By 4 a.m. sleep has returned, and the deep night continues its slow passage toward dawn. The driver wakes briefly around 3 in the morning, just a few seconds of consciousness, listening. The auxiliary power unit continues its steady cycle. The wind has decreased. The heating system maintains its quiet work. This momentary waking is not accident, it is habit. Years of sleeping in the cab create a light awareness that surfaces periodically through the night, a brief inventory of sound and sensation, confirming that everything continues as it should. The carbon monoxide detector mounted near the ceiling shows its small green indicator light. The driver's eyes find it in the darkness without conscious thought. Green means safe. The detector runs on batteries replaced every 6 months without fail. Outside, snow has accumulated against the passenger side door, enough to see the drift forming in the gap between cab and trailer, not enough to block the exhaust pipes that extend upward behind the cab. But the driver makes a mental note to check before morning departure. Snow blocking an exhaust with an engine idling creates carbon monoxide that seeks any path inward. The danger is invisible. Odorless. It renders you unconscious before you know anything is wrong. The phone sits on the small shelf, screen dark but charged. The lifeline to emergency services if something fails, if the heating quits and the temperature drops. If another driver needs help, if road conditions ahead change drastically, the phone stays charged through the night, always. The truck cab offers complete control. The door locks from inside. The windows seal. The heat adjusts to preference. The space contains exactly what the driver has chosen to keep. For drivers who struggle with loneliness, this isolation presses heavy during long winter nights. For others, this solitude is precisely the point. No unexpected interruptions, no compromises about temperature or light or sound, just the chosen environment and the steady night. Dozens of other trucks sit within 100 yards. Other drivers sleep in their own sealed spaces. But there is no interaction, no awareness of each other beyond the visual fact of nearby vehicles. Each cab is its own isolated world. The driver adjusts the blankets, settles back into warmth, the brief check complete. Everything continues safely. Sleep returns. The phone alarm vibrates at 6:30. Still dark outside, but the quality of darkness has changed. The driver wakes slowly, remaining under the layered blankets while consciousness fully returns. Frost covers the inside of the windshield, delicate crystalline patterns spreading across the glass, where moisture from breathing met cold surface through the night. More frost decorates the side windows. The overnight low reached 8 degrees. The heating systems maintained 65 inside. The driver does not immediately leave the bed. Instead, the heating is adjusted upward. The vents begin pushing warmer air. The cab temperature will climb toward 75 over the next 15 minutes while the driver remains cocooned in blankets. This is the morning sequence. Maximize interior warmth before exposing skin to the cold shock of movement and dressing. The frost on the interior glass begins to glisten slightly as it starts its slow melt. Outside, thicker frost coats the exterior windshield completely. The world beyond is white and grey, dawn approaching, but not yet arrived. Finally, the driver emerges from the blankets. The base layers that serve through the night are joined quickly by heavier clothes, thermal socks, insulated pants, 2 shirts. The same efficient movements performed in limited space every morning. Before opening the door, the driver moves to the front seats and starts the main engine. It turns over roughly in the cold, then catches and settles into its deeper rumble. The engine will need 10 minutes of warm-up before the truck moves. During that time, oil circulates, systems pressurize, the engine block temperature climbs toward operating range. The driver pulls on boots and coat, opens the door to step outside. The cold is immediate and absolute. The air burns slightly in the lungs. Breath becomes thick vapor. The metal step is slick with ice. Around the truck stop, other engines are starting. Other drivers emerge for pre-trip inspections. The night parking lot transforms into morning activity, checking tire pressure, clearing snow and ice from mirrors and lights, inspecting for any damage or mechanical issues that appeared overnight. The driver walks the perimeter of the truck, examining everything methodically. Snow is cleared from lights, ice chipped from handles, the exhaust pipes checked and clear, tire pressure holding despite the cold, no leaks, no problems. Back inside the cab, warmth feels luxurious after 10 minutes in 8-degree air. The frost has melted from the interior windows. The defroster works on the exterior. Windshield slowly clearing viewing space. The driver prepares coffee using the small 12-volt pot. Eats a quick breakfast. The body needs fuel before the day begins. By 7:15, the windshield is clear. The engine is warm. The pre-trip inspection is complete. The truck is ready. The driver guides the big rig slowly through the parking lot, careful of ice patches and other vehicles maneuvering in the cramped space. At the lot exit, the truck pauses, then pulls onto the highway. The sleeper cab, sanctuary through the freezing night, becomes background space again. The driver's attention shifts forward to the road, to the day's route, to the next delivery and the miles ahead. Tonight, somewhere else, the evening search for parking will begin again. The heating systems will activate. The blankets will be arranged. The ritual will repeat. But that is hours away. For now, there is only the winter road and the forward movement and the white landscape passing on both sides. Across the country tonight, thousands of other drivers are settling into their own sleeper cabs. They are parked at different truck stops, rest areas and quiet roadside pullouts, but the rituals are similar. The fuel checks, the heating systems cycling on, the gradual transition from driver to temporary resident of a compact metal space. This network of workers keeps goods moving while most people sleep in conventional homes, unaware of the system functioning around them. The groceries that appear on shelves, the packages that arrive at doorsteps, the materials that reach factories, all of this depends on drivers willing to spend winter nights in truck cabs, maintaining their schedule regardless of temperature or snowfall. The modern sleeper cab represents generations of evolution. Earlier truckers slept in day cabs with no dedicated space, using sleeping bags wedged behind seats. Some used external sleeper boxes mounted to their trucks, unheated metal compartments that offered shelter but little comfort. The integrated sleeper cab, with its own climate control and amenities, is a relatively recent development, transforming long-haul trucking from pure endurance test into a sustainable, if still demanding, profession. Some drivers specifically prefer winter routes. They appreciate the reduced traffic, the stark beauty of snow-covered highways, the particular camaraderie that develops at truck stops during severe weather. Others simply endure the cold months, counting days until spring returns. The first grey light of dawn reveals fresh snow covering everything. Inside the cab, the driver wakes to intricate frost patterns decorating the windshield, delicate crystalline formations on both sides of the glass. The heating systems have maintained their steady work through the night, but the extreme cold outside has still found ways to leave its signature. The morning warm-up begins, heat increased to maximum. A few more minutes under the layered blankets while the cab's interior temperature climbs those final degrees. Then the quick transition out of the sleeping bag into the cold weather clothing that's been kept within reach. Outside, the engine roars to full life. Snow must be cleared from lights and mirrors. The pre-trip inspection proceeds carefully, checking for ice accumulation, testing that every system has survived the night's cold. Other trucks around the lot are beginning their own morning sequences, diesel smoke rising white against the pale sky. Coffee, breakfast, the mental preparation for another day on winter roads. The temporary sanctuary of the sleeper cab will be left behind, but the knowledge remains. Tonight, somewhere else along the route, the ritual will begin again. Another truck stop, another parking space, another night of transforming a metal cabin into a warm refuge against the cold. The amber lights illuminate the snow-covered lot one final time as the truck pulls away, joining the early morning flow of commerce, carrying forward the hidden rhythm of life on the road.